Francis, and this is my presentation on the genocide of the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. So, I would like to preface this presentation by saying that I will be referring to Myanmar as both Burma and Myanmar during this, but just know that they are the same place. So, hopefully that will avoid any confusion. Also, if you hear a whirring, that is the shower. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. My thesis. So my thesis is that the genocide of the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar was a direct result of Myanmar having been recently released from years of colonial rule. So, going off of that, colonization in Myanmar. In the 19th century, British colonizers expanded into what was then called Burma, but what is now Myanmar. They won the First Anglo-Burmese War in 1826 and had complete control over Burma following this until the 20th century. They came from India to Burma, so, naturally, Muslim and Hindu Indians migrated with them and soon occupied most of the civil service, which is government workers like the policemen and yes. Employing people from India was cheaper and helped with the debt they had gone into trying to take control over Burma in the war. Myanmar was liberated from British rule in 1946. Race and colonization. Tensions between the ethnic Burmese and the ethnic minorities were present before Myanmar was liberated. The divide between the two groups stemmed from who each group sided with during colonization. The ethnic Burmese, or Burmans, strongly resisted British rule, while the Rohingyas and other ethnic minorities accepted it with little resistance. As a result of this, the city was divided. The ethnic minorities living relatively comfortable lives under the protection of the British, and the Burmans under constant attack. Later, these roles would reverse to a devastating effect. Despite having initially sided with the British, the Rohingya Muslims ended up fighting against colonization and helped put the perpetrators of their own genocide into power. They were a small army that was relatively weak, but were on the side of the nationalistic Burmans. A racial classification system was also put into place when Myanmar was still under colonial rule, and remains relatively unchanged today. It primarily serves the purpose of declaring who is indigenous and who is not. 135 ethnic groups have been divided into 8 indigenous ethnic groups, and if a person has mixed heritage, they are not included. The Rohingya Muslims were not classified as indigenous, despite having been in Myanmar since the 15th century. They are still considered illegal immigrants to this day. So who are the Rohingya Muslims? The UN has determined that the Rohingya Muslims are one of the world's most persecuted minorities. The Rohingya Muslims are an ethnic and religious group that practices Sunni Islam. Sunnis believe that a Muslim leader does not have to be a descendant of the Muhammad, while Shia Muslims believe that they must. Most of the Muslims in the world today are Sunni. Before the genocide officially began in 2017, the Rohingya Muslims made up about a third of the Myanmar population. While the Rohingya Muslims are both an ethnic and religious group, it is believed that they were primarily targeted for their ethnicity and not religion, because other Muslim groups were given citizenship when they were not. It's no doubt that religion has a role, considering that Myanmar is under Buddhist rule, but the genocide has been determined as a result of ethnic cleansing. The genocide. The Myanmar government has been killing and raping the Rohingya Muslims and has burned countless villages down. There have been reports of soldiers throwing infants into burning buildings and horrible gang raping incidents. This forced the Rohingya Muslims to flee to overcrowded, dangerous refugee camps. Over 24,000 deaths have been confirmed, and over 700,000 people have been forced to flee since 2017. It's hard to know the exact numbers because the area where the most violence has taken place is restricted by the Myanmar government. Speaking of which, if you look on Google Maps, I didn't include an image, but you can see all of the burned villages in the area. Even before 2017, over 1,000 Rohingya were killed and the government would arrest them for arbitrary reasons, looting their homes and causing many to flee. The image that I included on this slide is of Rohingyas fleeing across the border. The refugee crisis. Because the Rohingya Muslims have been denied citizenship, they legally have nowhere to go, so they are stuck in between a certain death and leaving their homes for a neighboring country that can't accept them. The biggest refugee camp in the world is in Bangladesh and houses 630,000 Rohingya Muslims that were forced to flee. They don't hold citizenship anywhere, so are not protected by any government. Some don't even make it to the camps, getting gunned down when crossing the Nath River. How outside countries have responded. The USA put sanctions on the main perpetrators, but Trump won't call the Rohingya Muslims genocide a genocide, or even crimes against humanity. He will not confront the highest levels of the Myanmar military either, despite the thousands dead and even more driven out of their homeland. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, on the other hand, spearheaded an intense investigation into the genocide. The State Department put a travel ban on 4 Myanmar generals, which served as more a blow to their ego as opposed to an actual threat to their power. China, South Korea, Japan, and Singapore, all have business ties to the Myanmar military. China helps to protect the political and military leaders due to their close political relationship. Many countries have invested in military companies that could be an economic threat to lose. Despite this, actions must be taken, and if the funds run out for the Myanmar military, they will be forced to relent in order to regain their important economic connections. Countries still won't cut their ties and enable the perpetrators to continue the genocide. While there are a lot of investigations going on, no country is taking action to step in and stop the military. A lot of legal and financial juggling is being done with very little immediate action. And the picture on this slide is of a UN conference about the matter with the leader of Myanmar. UN involvement. The International Criminal Court is already trying generals for crimes against humanity, war crimes, genocide, and more. The UN launched an investigation and demanded for all countries to cut economic ties with Myanmar government. Senior General, his name is on the screen, but I have a hard time pronouncing it, so I'm going to say Senior General Min is under investigation for genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. He was at the top of the chain of command in the army that committed many heinous crimes such as murder, arson, and the rape of the Rohingya people. And that is him on the screen now. The UN also launched the International Independent Fact-Finding Mission on Myanmar and put together a detailed report of the crimes that the leaders of the Myanmar government have committed. They released this in an attempt to persuade other countries to cut economic ties with Myanmar, but didn't achieve the result they had strived for. And that is my presentation. Thank you. Here are my links to the photos that I included.